Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I want to share with you my experience volunteering at conventions this year. So if you are someone who is interested in volunteering and especially in volunteering at conventions and other nerdy activities, then please continue watching. So this year I volunteered at two events. First I volunteered at Finncon 2022, which was hosted earlier in the summer in Espoo, Otaniemi in the Aalto University. And it was my first time volunteering at the con committee level, so I was involved pretty much from the get-go with the organizing and planning for the convention, as well as doing volunteering on the actual convention itself on the day off. And then I also volunteered this year for the Worldcon. I was a costume repair shop monitor. I did a few hours of volunteering for the convention, so I can approach this topic from two angles, being part of the con committee and being part of the sort of convention volunteers on the day off who were not necessarily in the planning stages of the convention. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit of what I actually ended up doing as part of, for example, the Finncon volunteering. I was in charge of doing the English translations for a lot, not all, but a lot of the communications and publications that we had. I also worked with the website team in order to have the English side of the website up and running and all the content for that, and also translated our convention's COVID policy, etc. So basically translating the communications into English was part of my job, as well as contacting the panelists and program participants and sending a bunch of emails, and also replying to emails and replying to questions that might arise. So communications and helping out with the program team was basically what my participation pre-con ended up being. At the convention, I was mostly manning the info desk and also responding to various inquiries and basically doing random gophering around the convention. So that was what I was tasked with. And then for Worldcon, as I said, I was a costume repair shop monitor. So what I did was that I had assigned shifts and I was basically sitting at the costume repair space and helping out with various requests that people came in with regards to repairing their costumes, sometimes their clothing, helping with general stuff for example, doing it for them or showing them what we had in terms of supply so they could do the repair themselves. And that was my participation in terms of volunteering. In Worldcon, I was also a program participant. So I was a moderator for one panel and I was a panelist in another panel. And that is a kind of separate thing from the volunteering, so I'm not talking about that experience here. I'm mostly going to focus on the volunteering aspect. Now, I have talked a little bit about what I actually did as a volunteer, but how did I end up as a volunteer and why? So I have been in the convention circuit since 2006. 2006 was the first convention I ever went to, and that was another Finncon. And I have basically been doing conventions actively ever since 2006, so for quite a bit. And as I have been going to conventions as an attendant for the past 16 years, I have started more and more thinking about how can I give back to those communities and how can I give back to the events, because in terms of my experiences with the SFF community and anime communities, and also in terms of having been able to network and find friend groups and just like be accepted in my interests and find other people with similar interests and who are like-minded as myself. Conventions have played a huge role in that, and conventions are, for the most part, hosted by volunteers who don't get paid. So as I have grown as I have grown into adulthood and now into my middle years, I have started wondering that I should be able to give back, and that is why I wanted to eventually volunteer. And this year, as I was already planning on going to these conventions, I thought, well, why not? And so I decided to volunteer, especially with Finncon. I actually attended last year, I want to say, I attended the first call for the volunteers. So I was able to start pretty early on with the volunteering process there. So as conventions are run by and run with volunteer workers, usually you can find contact information for volunteering on the conventions or events website. Usually they will have all of the contact information readily available. So if you are interested, you may just contact people and ask for like when are the volunteering spots opening up, or if you want to participate in the planning of the event, you can let them know that you are available. Now, one of the things that I think is very beneficial when you are thinking about volunteering is to set boundaries for yourself. How many hours are you willing to put forth? How much of your labor are you willing to give? You should definitely think about that and set realistic expectations for yourself and your own abilities, and also communicate those to the convention staff early on. That way there will be no like misunderstanding or anything of the sort. Like set your boundaries early on, decide how many hours you are actually capable and willing to do, and also be realistic about the sorts of skills that you can bring to the table. For example, are you a tech-savvy person? Are you good with like communications or web design, etc., etc.? I found it very useful to do kind of like a list of skills that I know that I'm able to execute very well, but are not necessarily huge stressors for me. Example, as my day job, I am working full-time as an IT systems administrator, but I decided early on that I am actually not going to do that as a volunteer because it would be too stressful for me. And I thought that it would probably hinder me as a volunteer because I would basically be jumping into new systems and having to learn all of this stuff instead of actually like being able to just use my existing knowledge and stuff, because all sorts of like IT systems, etc., are very different depending on what infrastructure and services the convention might end up using. So even though early on I was thinking about offering my assistance in the IT administration and IT support capacity, I early on decided that I'm not going to focus on that, and I rather wanted to focus on my skills in communications and helping out, for example, with the costume repair when it comes to like Worldcon. So be realistic of what your skills are, and also be realistic about what type of experience you want your volunteering experience to be. Like, do you want to like dedicate yourself full time for the convention? Or do you want to be able to also enjoy parts of the convention as a convention attendant? You need to be able to plan that out pre-convention and also let the convention staff know what you are willing to do as a volunteer. So that is very important. Another thing that is very important, in my opinion, is also to let them know what you are not willing to do. This is also part of the setting the boundaries thing, like let people know beforehand that even though, for example, you might have experience and skills in certain areas, if you are not willing to do those for the convention volunteering purposes, it is good to let people know. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I generally had a very good experience in volunteering. I will say that it makes it a different experience in terms of attending the convention. For example, in Finncon, I was mostly focusing on the volunteering side, whereas in Worldcon, because I had traveled out of country to a different place, I already knew that I want to do less volunteering. I still wanted to volunteer, but I wanted to do less volunteering so that I had time to meet up with my friends, etc. So those are kinds of two different types of boundaries set for two different types of events. So it is also good to know that you don't always have to volunteer the same way for every single event. You can sort of choose the best approach to yourself in terms of like what the event is going to be and where it is going to be held, etc. So just to recap everything I said, be proactive, find your local conventions and get in touch with the organizing teams. Remember that communication is key. Make your limitations and your skills known, and also plan out what type of convention experience and volunteering experience you want to have. Have realistic goals and expectations, and most important of all, remember to have fun. So yeah, that has been my experience with volunteering in conventions this year. I hope you find this video helpful, and if you have any questions or any thoughts or insights, please leave them down in the comments and let's have a discussion. And also, if you have ever volunteered at conventions, please let us know your experiences so that we can have a sort of resource for all of the people who are interested in volunteering at conventions. So yeah, I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!